Okay, so this short theory video is an introduction to the subject of blend shapes. And blend shapes are a way of animating which allows us to blend from one shape to another. So if we take this little Wikipedia puzzle shape here, which I've taken from Wikipedia, we can look at the shape here on the left and also the shape here on the right. And what the animator has done is to blend from this shape to the left. So animating with blend shapes is actually more a modeling exercise than anything else, because you have to model the two shapes and then you blend from one to the other. It's most commonly used for facial animation. This is an example here of different facial mouth shapes. Now, the model is very similar. The number of vertices that makes up this polygon model, that makes up this polygon mesh, will be exactly the same in each of these examples. Here's the base shape down here, and here are the 5 blend shapes or target shapes, which are essentially clones of this, and we're using sliders to blend from this shape to one of these. And you can see how useful this is for animating facial shapes. Now, blend shapes are also called morph target animation, or sometimes shape interpolation. And it's contrasted with skeletal animation, which is really where you build the bones of an animal and then flex the bones. So here's another example. There's our base shape here. Here are a series of target shapes, and what the animator will do to animate these mouth shapes is blend from the base shape to the target shapes. And you'll have a slider to do that. Blend shapes can be very, very simple, or they can be very, very complex. It's also known as morphing. You're really morphing from one shape to the other. We'll start off in the first exercise we do with some very simple blend shapes, just to give you an understanding of how the system works. Here's an example where we're morphing from a president, an ex-president, to a governor, or an ex-governor. And you can simply use a blend shape as long as the topography that creates George W. Bush is exactly the same. That is, the number of vertices in George W. Bush are the same as in Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can morph from one to the other and then back again. Now, this is contrasted with skeletal animation or skeletal rigging, where you're really animating with bones and you're attempting to reproduce a skeleton, and then you're adding controls to manipulate that skeleton. That's a different way of approaching animation. So, how would we actually begin to make blend shapes? Well, we would start with a neutral base model. That would be this model here. Then you're going to create a new shape by deforming the vertices. Let's say we wanted to animate the smile here. The vertices here on this mesh would be adjusted to create the smile. And that becomes the new target position. And we then create a slider in Maya to blend between the base shape and the target position. And the animator decides how much to animate that slider, whether you want to take the slider to 10 or to 9 or to 8 or to 7 or whatever. So here's the theory of how we start. So we start with a neutral base model, the base mesh. In this case, it's just the lower part of this face. The next thing you'll do is you're going to create a new shape by deforming the vertices. Here's our new shape over here. So we've got base shape on the left, target shape on the right. The next thing that's going to happen is you're going to save your new target shape as a new target position. And then once you've done that, we will create a slider to blend between these two positions. And here's the blend shape slider in Maya. And as you can see, you can add keyframes here by clicking on key. You can move these sliders up and down. And that's basically how you do it. So again, in this example here, you can see we're sliding between the base shape here, and then the smile has been turned on there, and you can see the slider going up and down. So the principle is the same for all of these examples. Here's another example, same thing, base shape over here, morphing into the smile over there. And almost invariably, whenever you see facial animation, it's almost always going to be a blend shape. And just about the only thing that will probably be on a bone or skeletal control will be the jaw control, which will be on a standard normal rotation. So in a complex facial rig, there might be literally hundreds of blend shapes, and it is a slow and laborious process and can take a very long time. Here's a nice example by Hanbo Park. You can see there's the base shape over there, and here's all the various target shapes with their different expressions. So the real skill involved in animating with blend shapes is really a modeling exercise, which is to make sure that these shapes are very, very nicely modeled. So good facial blend shapes tend to involve modeling skills and, of course, animation skills. You want a good modeler and a good animator working together, or in a perfect world, somebody who can do both. Here's some more examples based on a clown face. And another example here. So, this brings us to the question of what happens if you have to change the base model. Do you have to rebuild all the base shapes? And the answer is yes. So when you're modeling something, and in our first exercise we're just going to use simple cubes, but if you were modeling something like a human face and you wanted to do blend shapes based on it, you better make sure that your human face was correct before you start to make the blend shapes. Because as soon as you change the base model, you will change, or you will have to change all of the target shapes as well. And I've worked on an awful lot of talking dog movies, and we found this a real problem. If any changes had to be made to the basic topography of the base model, then everything else would have to change as well. So what would we use these for? If we were doing some advertising, say a TV commercial, a bar of soap or something, or a tube of toothpaste, you might use blend shapes to animate the character and give it personality. And you could also use it for something like eye shapes. Any kind of shape where you're manipulating skin and muscle, and you need to get a varied range of different shapes. Animating with blend shapes can be a very, very powerful tool. So this has been a general introduction to the subject. The next thing to do is to go on to the technical video, which will show you how to create them.